And Hendon Hooker came in, and he was the player of the game according to the lines, the Meyer player of the game, 12 of 15, and he did start 0 for 2, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, man.
Mm-hmm. Started 0 for 2.
Bad miss, too, on one of them.
Yep, bad miss, too. And then he finished the game, so what would that be? I guess 12 of 13 after that. So he missed one throw after that. And then he had 150 passing yards, 108.3 quarterback rating, and a rushing TD. Had a fumble as well. Had a pretty big fumble. But he recovered, game-winning drive, and then, of course, Jake Bates finished it off. But, boys, I'd be remiss if I didn't bring up Hendon Hooker.
Remiss.
I would if I didn't bring him up. He did look very, very good for the most part. Mistakes, of course. There's going to be those. Not saying the guy's perfect, but when you look at what he's been since we first talked about him in OTAs and minicamp to training camp to now, the progression is there. And that's kind of what we've talked about now with Hendon Hooker. And this is why I made the case last week that I think for the regular season, and I wasn't mad at people saying, bring in this quarterback, bring in that quarterback to be your quarterback too. I get all that. But the point I was making is with time and with development, I think that's something that every snap's going to matter for Hendon. He's going to continuously get better. And I think by the time you need him, which you might not need him at all, Jared will probably most likely play the whole entire regular season. But if there is a game, let's say in the middle point of the season, I have confidence that he will be ready to back up Jared at that point, given there'll be more time. And he'll be able to go against the ones or go against the twos in practice. He'll be moving up the depth chart. Like, I think there'll be that development, and he'll be ready. So I made the case that he could be quarterback too, and I think on Saturday I'm more confident in that statement. Given who's out there as well, I don't think Ryan Tannehill's realistic. He's obviously better than Jake Fromm and Nate Sudfeld, and I think you fellas, you're looking right at your quarterback too on Saturday.
I mean, hey, Jeff, I wrote it in my notes. I told you before the show, I said I wrote one thing for Hendon Hooker in my notes. And it just says credit Jeff. Credit, give Jeff some credit. So there you go. I'll give you a little bit of credit because there was like the time, and I said this too before the show. It's like there was a time a couple weeks ago, like if you went to training camp, and if there's people in the chat who are at training camp, it was very well known that like if you just sat there for an hour and watched Hendon Hooker, like he was struggling on throws. And there were progressions he was struggling with and things that he was you could tell. And then you saw him get taken to the side with some quarterback coaches and just working one-on-one while they're doing 11-on-11. And they're just like, hey, just working with them. Like, I think the thing that like I've seen the last 2 weeks out of Hendon Hooker, it's the only thing you can't deny is this kid is talented. Like, he's got all the talent in the world. Like he's mobile. He's got an arm. And when it comes down to it, like what we saw Saturday, he can make decisions and he makes the right ones. So like everything, like he has it all. It's just about like getting consistent and doing it. So you give him some time. I think like right now, like I feel comfortable. And I said this before the preseason. I think we all agreed with this. Before preseason, it was, hey, we just need to see it in the preseason games. And then we can, after that, we're going to be like, all right, do we need to go get someone? I said earlier in the week, I said, depending on what happened Saturday or last week on Saturday and Thursday with Hendon Hooker, then we can hit the red button. And we saw the 2 games, and we don't have to hit the red button because I think, like, hey, Hendon Hooker is going to be fine if you do need him for a game or 2. Like, they will find a way, and Dan Campbell, Ben Johnson, they will find a way. And it feels like a little bit so, too. Like, they're thinking about his development like the Green Bay Packers do with, like, Jordan Love. Like, hey, this is like a 3-year thing. This is a 2-year thing. Like, we have Jared Goff, and we're going to go win a couple Super Bowls in the next 2 or 3 years, and then we can evaluate from there. Like, I think his contract's up in 2026. So, like, 2026. All right, we can evaluate. Do we want to extend him for a year or 2, just like Jordan Love got extended for a year or 2, or like how do we want to go about that? So that's what I'm. Hey, we've got a backup now. That's all that matters. I don't think, and I hate the people too. And this is Jeff, where I was like, we're not battling on this today, where it's like we can victory lap it. I think, like I said, I give you credit, but it was always we have to see it first. Like they're like, I get like he was always talented. Like I watched a lot of him at Tennessee. The talent was through the roof. You had to see it, especially after sitting out for a year with an ACL and then going what we saw at training camp. It was like, all right, what's going on with this kid? Looked good. Like he looked really good on Saturday. He did have a couple, and Dan said it too in the press conference. He had a couple slip-ups, but he did. But that's going to come with time. That was his second NFL game.
Yeah, I mean, I think Hendon Hooker, he's the clear quarterback too. There's no denying it. Nate Sudfeld, I still think, is probably hanging on by a roster spot at this point if somebody that's notable gets cut around the league. But I think this just shows the difference between preseason games and joint practices specifically for quarterbacks, because Hendon Hooker compared to Nate Sudfeld, pocket mobility is everything. And I know that Hendon took a couple of sacks, but Hendon's a guy that brings a different dynamic to this offense. So knock on wood, Jared Goff gets a concussion. I think prime example is like when Anthony Richardson got hurt last year. The Colts went into Baltimore. But the Ravens had no idea how to game plan for a quarterback like Gardner Minshew, and all they have is film on Anthony Richardson. Well, somehow the Colts go into Baltimore and they pull off a huge upset. So I think when you look at that, if there's a position where Hendon Hooker needs to step in, I think he's fully capable to, 1, hit a slant route, 2, hit a hitch route. The thing that does concern me is like if he would roll out on play action, but really when you're looking at the options, they're probably not going to try to do all that much with him. Just hand the ball off because you have the best backfield in the NFL. So Hendon Hooker, to Booner's point, he's not going to be seeing the field outside of injury for 2 or 3 years, but I think it's a smart thing to do. And I think if there was ever a time, especially in the future, where Hendon Hooker has to play for this team, they're going to be just fine because he's an incredible athlete, but he can dissect defenses and just win the game. Now that he's got game speed, he can really feel what this Ben Johnson offense, all these schemes, he can see why he does it the way he does. Nate Sudfeld, he's been in preseason games before, so especially during camp, that's why there's a difference. Now, to Booner's point, there was a lot of things to be concerned about, like Hendon Hooker was like throwing balls in the dirt during just like walkthroughs. Like it was like, what the hell are we doing here? But I just think that shows like he's overthinking. He was overthinking. Now he's able to play football again, and he's able to develop Hendon Hooker into the quarterback that he wants to be in the NFL.
Yep. Yeah. I think it's well said, both of you. Well said.
Yeah, and the thing too is like I was saying it on the stream. Like I would have loved to see Hendon play the first half instead of the second, because I would have loved to see him against the
starters.
Chiefs starters for 2 possessions. Like, I would have liked to see that instead of having to see him against the threes, essentially. I'm not taking any credit away from what he did. Like he did an incredible job. But again, like you have to put in perspective a little bit who he was going up against. And when you like look at that, you're like, all right, the main thing out of this guy Hendon Hooker went out there and got live reps versus another team. And like that's fine. Now, like if you threw him up against week 1 versus the Los Angeles Rams defense, then you're like, okay, that might be a different story, especially when it comes to regular season. You guys know the difference from preseason to regular season. It gets taken up 100 notches. So, like, is he ready for 100 notches up versus a first-team defense, a top 10 defense in the NFL? Probably not. Like now. Like if we're being realistic, like now. But he can be, and I think there's to your point, Jeff. Like down the line, weeks down the line, maybe it's week 8, week 9, like. This dude's got the reps now. Like he's been in this offense fully. It's just interesting to know. I wish I would have been able to see that. That's all.
Yeah, I think it's fair to bring up who he was playing against, but I also think it's fair to bring up that he played well against, for the most part. I get a couple mistakes, but he played well against those guys, right? We punish him if he didn't play well against the threes. So since he did play well, it's like, okay, cool, check. Like we saw him, he looked like he belonged. Check. So and the thing I always bring up, and this is why I have confidence, and I never faulted you for being like, hey, we need another quarterback. I don't think you were wrong for that take. Like, I understand that completely. And I guess the point I was making last time we talked about this is just you got to think like with better defenses he'll be facing, he'll have his starters offensively. So I look at that as well. You have to factor that in, and it won't be a vanilla offense. It'll be Ben Johnson game planning for him specifically. I don't even want to make this like Hendon's, he's arrived, like, watch out Jared Goff. Like when he signed that contract, it's done. Like we all agreed. I toned my voice down on Hendon Hooker and all that stuff. I toned it down. But what I will say is damn straight he got himself that quarterback 2 job, because he's not going to be throwing to Isaiah Williams. He's going to be throwing to Amon-Ra St. Brown, Sam Laporta, J-Mo, have Jameer and David as his running backs, have the offensive line. So I'm curious to see how he develops. I hope this week, man, I would let that man play the entire game. Like, just let that man play.
Think so?
Well, besides if the starters play. I'm sure that maybe we'll see the starters. It's their last preseason game. Maybe we'll see them for maybe a quarter drive. I don't know. Maybe we won't see them at all. If we don't see them at all offensively, let Hendon play. Just let him play. Find out if the dude can play or not in a bigger sample size. That would be my opinion on that. I don't think you really need to see more of Sudfeld unless they really think Sudfeld is still in the race. I don't know. But that's my take on it. I was positive to see him, what he did this week. I think it was positive, no doubt.
Sudfeld's out of the race. There's no race with Sudfeld.
Yeah.
There's not. Like literally, I will say the same thing I said last week when you guys all got mad at me, and I talked about it. I brought it up Saturday. It's just the only way Sudfeld gets a spot on this roster if this Jared Goff says, hey, like, I just want him around. I want him around so he can help me out. Like that's it. Like I need a towel boy. Like I need a binder guy. I need a water boy. Like with all due respect, but like someone to help him out day-to-day operations. Like that's the only way Sudfeld comes close to like being the third emergency quarterback.
Can I ask you something, Boone? I don't know if you know, you probably be the person to ask this. Because I saw in the chat, they have an emergency quarterback, right? That doesn't count against the roster.
Yeah. So third. That was my point last week when everyone started coming at me a little bit. Was there is a third emergency quarterback spot, and in my mind, like you probably will never get to like the only reason they made that rule. They made it. Do you guys remember the playoffs? I think it was 2 years ago.
49ers Eagles.
49ers. Yeah, like and they ran out of quarterbacks. They were like, we don't have we had 2 quarterbacks on the roster. We don't have a third. Like that is a scenario that probably will never happen. So like you'll never have to see Sudfeld take the field. It's just more so like to be able to have that third guy and for him to just carry around his stuff and be like, you're my assistant essentially. Like I have a guy that knows the offense, that's around me and who's been with me for 3 years now, or 2 years. Yeah. That was it. And I told you guys, I don't know why you guys didn't hear what I said a week ago. I said there's
I heard you. I just think even if you look at the Browns, like they have 3 guys who have played before, like not Brock Purdy. If Nate Sudfeld goes out there, like you have no confidence. I'd rather have a guy that can be Gerald's towel boy, but still have ability to play on the field.
The third string quarterback probably will never go out there. And if he is about to go out there, if you're preparing for a week, they're going to trade for someone over Sudfeld.
That's my point. So it's just why put yourself in that situation when you can just do it now and have the player in the offense already. Like Nate Sudfeld is never a guy you want taking a snap on the field. I understand.
You don't hear what I ever say with Sudfeld. No one understands what I say.
No, I guess I don't.
No,
Jeff doesn't. No one does.
No, it's not about that.
We do. It's just we don't think that because you can have an emergency quarterback on the sideline, it should automatically be Nate Sudfeld. We all agree. Nate Sudfeld cannot play NFL football. So if you're going to be taking even an emergency spot, if you're that emergency quarterback, I would like to have confidence and at least see that you can play NFL football. So when I say I do not want Nate Sudfeld, it's not because they can't have an emergency quarterback. I prefer a different emergency quarterback. That's all it is.
Okay.
I heard your point.
Yeah, and we'll see. Hendon Hooker quarterback too, but I don't know. Maybe they just like Sudfeld and he's a good guy and
I don't think it's not that he's a good guy. Like, quit making up excuses. The kid sucks. He's not a good football player. Like, quit disagree with me when I agree with you guys. Like, the guy sucks. The only reason he's on the roster is because Jared Goff knows the kid, and Jared Goff's comfortable with him, and the guy knows the offense, so he can work and help Jared Goff throughout the year. Like, literally, that is it. Like, this kid will never touch the field in a regular season game. Not once, even if he's the third quarter emergency quarterback. Like, it's just a guy that is brains. He's an extra quarterbacks coach on the field that you just have in your room. That is literally it. That he is literally the what was it, David Blau of the last 2 seasons. That is him. It's that simple. Like, that's all it. Right. There's no other excuse.
We all agree he stinks. And Lucas, your point was even if there is a 1% chance that the stink could see the field, you're not happy with it. That's it.
Yes.
Just that little percent of potentially in play. Whatever. But we'll see. Who was the emergency quarterback for the 49ers? Was that something Johnson?
Josh Johnson, but then he got hurt and they had to put in McCaffrey.
Yeah. Oh geez. Well,
they had Johnson as a quarterback, but he got absolutely destroyed. He got a concussion.
Hopefully the Lions never have to even deal with that. Hopefully Jared, usually he's healthy, and I don't think you'll ever see Hendon anyway.